everybody, to the Bros and Cons podcast, where we're talking about episode 4 of the Last of Us series streaming on HBO.
Yes.
Hi, Mikko.
What's up?
All right, let's jump right into it.
Yeah.
This episode opens on Ellie with a gun, looking
Of
in a mirror.
course.
The thing that I want to touch on with that really quick is like this characterization of Ellie is so good.
It's so good. Can I just say right off the bat, I
Mhm.
think this might have been my favorite episode so far.
It was really good.
It's like, it's got, from what because I always go online and I go on Reddit and I like to get the full scope of what everybody thinks. Not
Mhm.
that I care what everybody thinks. But people said this one was like short and slow and boring for them. And I'm like, not for
Interesting.
me, not for
Yeah.
me. To me, this episode captured Joel and Ellie and why I love this series so much. Like, this is what I've been waiting for.
Yeah.
This was the episode that captured everything that The Last of Us means to me. And I'm like
Yeah.
really excited to just see everything go up from here. Because especially when I replay the game too, the first like several hours drag for me up until
Mhm.
they get to Pittsburgh. I almost said
Mhm.
Philadelphia. Up until they get to Pittsburgh, like it just lags for me.
Yeah.
So like that's where the game takes off to me and I get more
Y
interested in it when I personally play, and I feel like this is just where it's starting to hit its stride with their relationship in the
yeah,
show.
I absolutely agree. I think, this episode to me was all about the deepening of characters,
Yep.
and this is why I liked it so much is, like, one of the biggest notes I had in my head was, it's really good that they are taking their relationship to this point this soon in the season,
Mhm.
because they don't really get to that point, like you said, in the game
Mhm.
until, they hit Pittsburgh.
Yep.
Um, so I really like the way that this episode and their characters in particular were handled.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely.
There's still oh man, there's so much to talk about in this part, especially with Ellie and
Yeah.
Joel, of course.
Uh-huh.
But all right, so that's the this is another example of Bella Ramsey just like pushing the idea of she's still a kid. She still gets
Mhm.
so excited about shit.
Yeah. Yep.
But like you brought up in a past episode, like this is what a kid like her, a precocious kid like her gets excited about in the apocalypse is like, I
Exactly.
got a gun, I'm hiding a gun from Joel. I just want to see how cool I look in the mirror shooting it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, like to me that's Ellie,
mhm.
especially the 14-year-old version of Ellie. Like that's the
Yeah.
character.
Mhm.
And I love her take on it. Like the thing I'm loving about the show is you see Joel and Ellie and they are very much the same characters, but they are still so different. Like
Yeah.
I love that it's a new take and a new spin on these characters. Like it's nice because it's like there's always going to be like the video game version of Joel and Ellie for
Mhm.
me. And now it's like there's this other TV show version of Joel and Ellie that I can
Yeah.
enjoy just as much in a different
Yes.
way.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly. That
yeah.
that hits the nail right on the head. It's like
Hmm.
they that doesn't have to be like, especially with character, it doesn't have to be
Identical.
the comparison kind of, they've been so good and so smart about keeping like sort of the soul of them
Hmm.
while giving them new really beautiful well-rounded features.
Right. Like I don't want them to be carbon copies of the
Hmm.
game characters. I don't want them to be the same. I don't want them to say things exactly the same and look exactly the same. Like I'm
Yes.
glad they cast people that look relatively different. Granted, they're still fairly similar, but like that's where everyone gets all bent out of shape about
Yeah.
Bella Ramsey not looking exactly like Ellie. I'm glad she doesn't
Yeah.
because I need this to be different to be able to separate the two and have two takes of the same story. I
Mhm.
don't want some carbon copy
And the
version.
thing that she captures, both of them capture, and the thing that like makes it so interesting to watch is they're really good at capturing the soul of the character, like
Yeah.
really good at
Hmm.
capturing like the essence of like this is why we love Joel and Ellie, but their characterizations are so different.
Hmm.
It's
Exactly.
gorgeous to
Right.
watch.
Yep.
Something that I want to when she gets back to the truck with Joel siphoning gas,
Hmm.
two things. One is I was stoked to not see someone sucking on the siphon hose, 'cause
Yeah,
there's something about that in movies and television. I'm just like, "Oh, don't, just don't,
just don't.
just don't. I don't want
Uh-uh.
it." And so to see him like it was a little thing, obviously, no one
Right.
should talk about this, but, like,
Yeah.
to see him blowing it out instead, I was like, "Yeah, that's what I wanna
Mhm.
see, give me some ingenuity." And something that I've never seen before is, someone saying gas, uh, goes bad
Yep.
after whatever gas has an
Mhm.
expiration date, which
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah. See,
And
I knew
so
that, and I'm so glad that they actually made that a
yeah.
plot point in the show because they never really made that a plot point in the video game.
No, no, nobody makes that a plot
No one makes it a
point.
point, and I'm so glad they
Nobody
did.
yeah.
There's actually a
It
few things that I'm glad that they've made plot points or like dialogue about in this
yeah.
episode that I'll bring up later. But yeah, no, I'm really glad they brought that up.
Yeah, it's not something that I've ever seen, which is probably why I didn't know about it, but it makes
Mhm.
sense, and it gives a little bit more, like, stakes to the
Sure.
game. Like,
Yeah.
there's a little bit there's, like I would never have thought of that. That
Mm-mm.
makes things so much more difficult, and I dig it.
Yep.
Oh, what so this is the first really quick jumping back to Ellie, this is the second time in the
Mhm.
show where I've been like, "Ugh, pick it up," because she, like, drops the bullet. I was like, Pick that up, you're gonna
Yep.
need it."
You're
Like,
gonna need it.
resources are low, Ellie. So that's the first point.
Yeah. Oh, so I gotta talk about how I like literally like shouted and almost jumped off the couch when
I
she
know what
pulled
you're
out
gonna
the
say.
joke book.
Yeah.
I'm like, there it is.
I remember when we it was probably like our second or third playthrough of the game
Yeah.
where you just like you have the option to have her read another joke and you're just like triangle button, triangle button.
Oh yeah. I think years and years ago I played Left Behind at your place.
Yes,
And I
yes.
literally cycled through every single joke until she was like, "Okay, I think we're done." Like even
I know the
Ellie was
game's
sick of
like,
me.
I'm sick of this.
She's like, "You need to stop."
Calm down.
And I laugh at it like an idiot
Yeah,
too.
no.
Like I just enjoy stupid jokes and dad jokes.
Yeah,
Like
me too.
so it got me. But there's one joke she says, I can't remember which one it was, but then she's like holding the book and she like leans forward and just stares at Joel, like
Yeah,
waiting for a reaction. And I'm like, it's just such good acting. It's
that's
like
it.
that's Ellie to me. And I
Yeah.
love that they did that scene and they did it so well. And you know it's coming back.
Oh yeah,
It's coming
100%.
back.
I didn't
It's
expect
like she gets up off the operating table and starts saying jokes.
amazing. But I like that she's just so a line when they're back on the road is Joel says, "I'm persistent."
Mhm.
And that's Ellie.
Yeah.
Ellie's persistent. She's
Mhm.
going to break him down eventually, and she's enjoying the process of it.
Yep.
And oh god, it's just great. And this is also like the most consecutive dialogue that we've heard from Joel when
Mhm.
they're back on the road,
Yep.
which is great. So it's starting to work. She's
Mhm.
starting to break him down,
Yep.
which is so cool to see.
Mhm. Yeah, I love it. I love it.
It establishes him too, like their conversation about finding Tommy, it reestablishes him as like he thinks of himself as the protector.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and they went over that in the podcast quite a bit too.
Mhm.
The one that Troy Baker talks about
HBO has a companion podcast. I have to bring it up every time because
every
you do
time.
too.
Yeah.
HBO has a companion podcast, available on probably
Every platform.
every platform.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to hear these two ding dongs talk about this stuff, go and listen to
Yeah,
that.
because they're more serious and thorough and we're just stupid. So
Yeah, correct. 100% correct. There's also I want you to talk about like another piece taken right out of the game was her finding Bill's porn.
Yeah, I was like, "Oh, there it is." That whole I love that. I pretty much expected that entire scene to be in there because it's so iconic. It's so iconic that they used it as their trailer
Yes,
in 2013.
yes.
So it didn't surprise me too much that they put it in there, but it like nailed it. Like
Hmm.
that performance was peak for me. It was
Yeah,
just spot on. I loved her entire take on that and Joel's reaction and everything. It was
yeah,
just like, this is it. This
yeah,
is I love how they keep some things exactly the same, but
yeah.
I'm loving all the new stuff they're doing too.
And it's like probably because Neil Druckmann is such a has such a heavy influence in this the creation of this TV show is like he knows, and I think Craig Mazin as a fan knows the important bits, the stuff that
Hmm.
like the audience has to see.
Yep.
It's the stuff that like establishes very, very clearly and very quickly their characters.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like another thing that I love that they threw in here was in the game, you'll always see Joel like going, "Oh, I miss coffee," and things
Yeah,
like that. And then in the second game, even Ellie's like, "Oh yeah, he's always talking about coffee, and he finally got some, and who knows what he traded to get it, you
yeah,
know?" And so it's such a big deal that he actually gets coffee
yeah.
in this
The way
episode.
he is, and this is a really quick. I want to talk about them in the forest as well,
Yeah, I do too.
which had
Yeah,
my favorite joke,
yeah,
the scarecrow joke.
yeah.
It's my favorite joke, and like once again, it's just her further breaking him down. He's becoming a dad. He knows that dad joke. He's a dad,
Hmm.
which is just awesome, awesome to see. He
Yeah.
says that line. He keeps reassuring her like very sternly, like no one's gonna get us, no one's gonna find us.
Hmm.
And then he gets up and watches over her during the night.
Yeah,
It's just
which
good.
it's just yeah, it's a great characterization of Joel. And I
Yeah.
love how the morning starts with her just rolling over, smelling the coffee, and just being absolutely disgusted by it, which is so on brand for Ellie too.
Yeah.
It's like this is it. Like this is what I've just been waiting for with these characters. And like it's such a you got to just see her childlike behavior where she like
Hmm.
smells it and she just like she's all exasperated and she just rolls back over and goes
Yeah.
back to sleep. I'm like,
Yeah.
I love little bits like that because in the game they never show them resting aside from when they go to the safe house.
Hmm.
uh,
Exactly. Yeah.
and I love that they're able to actually show that moments like that in the game where they're trying to find a moment to rest and
Hmm.
relax and find peace because in a world like this you don't really get a moment to
Yeah.
relax.
You don't have those opportunities very
No,
often.
and that obviously wears on you, especially when you're trying to fight and be careful and cautious. And I love
Hmm.
that they're showing them trying to get sleep and wind down because you have to as a human being.
Yeah. And that's the biggest things is they keep showing them all the characters as human beings, and
Hmm.
that's huge.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things because there's a video game adaptation curse. And I think that's one of the things that is so often kind of cast aside, like
Hmm.
because they can be superhuman in the video games, but if you want something that feels real and tangible and good,
Yep.
you gotta change that thinking.
Hmm.
At least
For
at
sure.
least this show is what is showing me that.
Yep. Agreed.
Another dad moment for Joel is him just obnoxiously slurping that
I
coffee.
know.
It's like,
Like
oh,
that's
that's
it.
a dad. That's a
Yep.
dad right there.
Yeah, and that's like Joel and Ellie's interaction too. Like that's them, and
Hmm.
I'm so happy this episode is capturing that and
Hmm.
developing that. Another complaint I saw online is that people are like that was too fast, but I don't think it was too. Considering that it's 9 episodes, I don't think that was too fast at all.
What too fast? What's too fast?
That their relationship being went from being too underdeveloped to too developed so too fast, and I'm like,
That's but that's okay. Like
it's
you
such
can have
a
your go ahead and have your opinion. That's fine. Like it
sure
doesn't need to be the same opinion as me.
no
But that's what I liked about it. That's what I thought was smart about it. Because
yeah.
like we talked about in the beginning, um, the first couple hours of that game, you don't get this relationship, but you
Mm-mm.
have to do it in a TV show. Like take yourself out of being a lover of the game
Mhm.
and put yourself in the shoes of a TV show that is kind of limited.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You have to establish
Mhm.
that shit quick.
Yeah, we don't
Um,
get 13 to 16 hours of gameplay here. This is
Exactly.
This is television. I mean, imagine if they originally tried to fit this in a movie like they were going 2 years ago.
Oh
It
man,
would have been
we had that
horrible.
discussion years ago where we're like, can anyone do that? I
Like,
don't
you
think
can't
so.
do that, and now
Yeah.
we're in this golden era of television, and it's just the perfect, environment to create a show like this. It's finally happened.
And I think that HBO was exactly the right service
I do too. I don't
to
think
pick it
anyone
up.
else no one else could have pulled this off. HBO
No.
is because it's too gory, it's too violent, it's too
Mhm.
brutal. It's
Mhm.
such heavy, subject matter.
Mhm.
Anyone else, I think, would have glossed over a lot of these things.
Mhm. Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I absolutely agree with you. So I when they get into under the overpass, I really liked that. That tends to me up immediately, like
Mhm.
seeing this man-made uh
Yeah.
uh
Blockage.
blockage. It was so great. Also, Sarah Lee Truck. Shout out to Pop Pop.
Oh, yes. Katie's dad drives a bread truck,
Yeah, he
so
does. So Sarah Lee Truck, I was like, yeah. um, and that like that put me on edge. I didn't want Joel to go over there.
yeah, I was
Um,
surprised he even got out.
yeah, I loved I loved that it quietly showed you that there's danger ahead.
Mhm. Yep.
And uh when they decide to bypass it, it's another dad moment where he's like, "Just fucking read the map. Like, where am I going?"
And she was being so bratty back to him,
I know. She's like,
too.
"Where the fuck is north?" I'm like, "Yes, Ellie, that's me."
She's like, "It's my first day in a car."
It's my second day in a car, dude.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh,
I
too
love
great.
it.
It's so great. And
Too
then,
good.
yeah, and just I loved how they both, like, you could feel their, just their stomachs drop when they saw that the QZ was abandoned.
So that had one of my favorite lines in this episode, and it's like it's such a like a throwaway line, but
Mhm.
her stop, where the fuck is Fedra?
Yeah.
That like got me going.
Mhm. The audience hasn't seen Fedra gone yet. They've only heard it alluded
Yes.
to. They've only heard that the Baltimore QZ fell from Frank.
Yes.
But the other Fedra we've seen is in Boston, and they're this big, oppressive presence.
Yeah.
So to see that just obliterated, like, what
What's
the fuck
worse than Fedra?
tore down Fedra?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then it goes into the famous truck ambush scene that you see in the very first trailer in 2013, which is what sold me on the game
Yeah.
personally. Um, and it's just so intense. I love how they did it. I love how they did all natural audio. They didn't really do music, which in the game version they rely heavily on the song playing through the entire time,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very cinematic and very heavy and intense. But this is just all natural audio, and I love how jarringly different it is. Like, this is
Mm-hmm.
again where it gets set apart. There's the game version and then there's the show version, and that's what I love about this one. There's no, like, they've gone big sometimes, like obviously with the
Yeah.
planes crashing, and Tess blowing up the whole Capitol building.
Yeah.
But they've also gone on smaller scales too, which they did here, where there was no bus. The people sent, like, rallying towards them. It's just a simple nails busted their tires situation.
Well, nails busted. I'm gonna drop this really heavy thing on your windshield, which like
That
that
too, that was because that could have killed someone
that
easily.
freaks me the fuck out, dude. If
Yeah.
a pigeon gets too close to my windshield, I'm like, oh no,
Exactly.
it's
Yeah,
all
no,
over.
so that was really good, like, just so
And
well done.
that I
Um
think that's another Craig Mazin special where it's like I don't want the music to make you feel like
mhm,
I'm
yep.
gonna, and of course he uses it, or the show uses music really well so far, but there are moments where it's like I don't want to lead you. I just want
Mhm,
you to feel what you're feeling in the
yep.
moment, and my feeling was tense.
Yep. Yeah. No, it was good. And what followed was, I felt very similar to the gameplay that you go through after that scene too, and I just really liked how they executed that entire sequence.
Crashing into a laundromat, I feel like speaks to you on many different levels.
It does, because I love photographing laundromats. That's
Yeah.
like just the little quirk that I have.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great.
This is another really big character moment for me when they crash and Joel spots the hole in the wall
Hmm.
and oh, just good performances.
The
Them
acting in the scene was just
his
perfection.
look at me, you're not gonna get hit.
Yeah.
Oh, that, no pun intended, hit me real hard.
Yeah, because he's got like her eyes are locked on him, and she's
Hmm.
believing every word he's saying and trusting
Hmm.
him.
Yep, Joel the protector again.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
And this shows that Joel is skilled and
Hmm.
he's ruthless
Yep.
as well. And we've already seen him be I think the term that we used in the first episode was feral
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
before, but this is like a controlled level
Hmm.
of lethality that we I don't think we'd seen before in the show.
Yeah. No, not at all. You're seeing a more. It's him being confident, and it's also him going into a leadership role with her, which is
Yes.
also akin to being a parent.
Yes.
Yeah, he's filling those shoes for her,
Yeah.
essentially.
Ellie's reaction when she just at first just hears Joel and the guy that sneaked up on him struggling,
Hmm.
and then her choosing to act in that moment.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, this is another scene that I loved that they kind of altered a little bit from the game.
mhm,
And I think it's another scene that they handled better than the game
mhm,
on various levels here. So, video game version of Ellie, Joel gets in trouble, falls off a ladder. Someone kind of gets control over him, and I think their gun goes flying. She grabs the enemy's gun and shoots them in the head with it.
mhm,
And her reaction is, "Oh shit, I shot the hell out of that guy, huh?"
mhm.
Like, she's just kind of like, "Oh shit, what I do?" But she like
Yeah,
gets over it in 2 seconds and is like, "Oh, I did it."
yeah,
Um, and Joel kind of has that same begrudging, like, "Oh, you shouldn't have done that,"
mhm,
kind of reaction. Here, this was real to me.
yeah.
This felt
Ooh,
authentic.
and the another change here, like something that was really disturbing to me, and I can't remember if it was there much in the first game, but in the second game is when you like just wound someone and they just start shrieking.
Yeah, so they
It's
put that combat situation mechanic that's in the second game in here more bluntly. And that I love that they did that, but I also love that how they used it in this
mm-hmm.
situation. And how she comes out and you can tell she's scared to pull the trigger. And you can tell immediately where she aimed, and you can tell she
Yeah,
aimed at his lower back and the spine.
yeah.
So you know that probably wasn't a kill shot.
And she waited until the last minute.
She waited up to the last minute, but what I didn't expect was for the guy to really just be begging for his life.
Yeah.
But it doesn't surprise me that they did that, because one, that's what happens in the second game. They humanize all of your enemies that you go and battle through. And it just makes sense that they did this here, where it's in her own words, not her first time doing this, but that doesn't change the fact that it's deeply going to affect her on a mental level.
Mhm.
Um, and it just humanized the entire situation, because I feel like so many movies and games, like it's like they said in their own podcast where they covered this, you just become desensitized, and it
Mhm.
becomes monotone,
Yeah.
and it doesn't carry weight or meaning. This absolutely carried weight or meaning. This was just another scared teenager, basically. This guy could not have been over 18 or 19. It didn't seem
There absolutely. There's something about the line like my mom lives close to here.
like.
Can
Hmm.
if you
Yeah.
just take me to my mom?
Hmm.
That like
Yeah,
it
it's like,
establishes a couple things. First, that like he's a kid
yeah,
and he's not necessarily, this isn't like a a society just full of soldiers.
right.
There's, you
Yeah,
know.
these are just everyday people that are trying to survive,
Mhm.
and this is how they do it.
Mhm.
So
And for Joel to tell her to get back in the get back in the wall. Like
Yeah.
just another moment of Joel
Hmm.
trying to protect her in a
Yeah.
different way.
And she knows she has to.
Hmm.
And I love the following conversation where, she goes back into the room and she cries about it
Hmm.
and tries to hide that when he gets in there. But they still have a pretty honest conversation. I feel like all things
Hmm.
considered. I really love that he tried his best to apologize in the way he knew how. And she tried to show him that she was okay, but not really, in the way
Hmm.
she best knew how.
Yeah.
And they kind of go through that. Like, I don't think he has any questions about where she got this gun. I think it's pretty
Hmm.
obvious where she got it, and
Yeah.
he
Well,
knows.
and he takes it from her initially too.
Yeah, he does. But I think, he's decided she needs to have it.
Hmm.
Um,
Before we get to that scene, because I have a lot to talk about in that scene,
yeah.
I want to pop over really quick, much like the show did, to this colony that we're seeing.
Yeah, yeah.
Because there's a really good there's a really good bit of editing too,
Hmm.
where it transitions from them to
Hmm.
this colony, and I'm so do you want to explain this colony sort of in the colony in the game?
Yeah, so in the game, they don't really put any faces or names to the faces that you see. There's no characters or anything like that. It's just this villainous group of people that were likely children or
Hmm.
born after um, the Cordyceps started, who have decided to overthrow Fedra. Like, they don't know
Hmm.
anything else, basically. It's all younger individuals that grew up in this messed up world and decided we don't want to live under Fedra anymore, and they
Hmm.
overthrew them.
Yeah.
And they did it in a very violent manner.
Hmm.
And so now this group in what was originally Pittsburgh, but they've now made Kansas City, is a group of scavengers. And
Hmm.
they just kind of attack every single person that passes through. They don't have them join or take them in for safety. There's none of that. They strip them of everything that they're worth, of everything they have, and then they just burn their bodies.
Hmm.
It's dark. So,
Dark, and it's clear that they were the ones that set up the blockage in the overpass as
yeah,
well.
yeah, like that was
It's
very
like
intentional.
dark.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like they are
Um.
routing people there to take them of everything
Yes.
that they have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I so we open on an interrogation scene essentially.
Mhm.
And I am, let me get this out of the way right now.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Melanie Linsky,
Mhm. Yeah.
and I'm a big fan of her in this role.
Yeah, me too. I think if anyone has even seen her in like Yellow Jackets, like she plays this what appears to be this quiet, introverted housewife, but that is so not what she is.
Hmm.
I have to say her performance in The Last of Us kind of reminds me of, and this is a stretch, but this is what it reminds me of. She reminds me of the drug dealer in Euphoria. Do you know who I'm
Oh,
talking
I see what
about?
you're saying. I see what you're
This
saying. Like
woman
the
that
quiet, like unassuming,
quiet,
like
unassuming, like you think she's just this nice woman. She's not. Neither
mm-mm.
of those characters are nice women. Like they have an agenda, they have power over other people, and it's quiet and it's calm, but it's scary.
Melanie Linsky has this sweet little voice.
Hmm.
And when she spoke for the first time, I turned to James and I'm like, she's got this sweet little voice. She's gonna be a fucking psycho. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Those are always the scariest people.
and
And
she
mm,
has she like this is to me this is such an intriguing performance. She when she's not speaking and when it seems like to me when no
mhm,
one's watching her, she has the coldest, most calculating look on her face.
yep,
She's constantly thinking, and
mhm,
it's really interesting to see.
yep, yeah, and yeah, it's another role that's already getting heat online,
Mhm.
but I love that it kind of subverts the stereotype of what a woman can be in a powerful situation. Like,
Yeah.
there's so many stereotypes and personalities that are typecasted into what this
This
character should be,
the strong female
what a strong
character.
female character looks like.
Mhm.
This show and this game has always kind of subverted that,
Mhm.
um, in more ways than one, and I love that they kinda seem to be following that with a TV show.
Yeah.
It's I don't think we've even seen what she's fully capable of yet. I
No,
really don't.
this is one of the most interesting, uh this is an interesting character to me. This is I
Mhm.
wanna see where she goes next. She reads as desperate, like, her conversation with the doctor,
Yeah, and that
m
alone.
reads
Yeah.
is she's desperate, and I don't think that she's showing all of her cards even to her own people.
No, I don't think.
Um, and there's that, like, sort of who you would think of as the leader of, these scavengers, her, like, right-hand man,
Mhm.
who's the voice of Tommy in the game.
Yeah. Rip.
And
Yep.
you recognize his voice, and it's
I
lovely.
know. Yep.
Um, but he sometimes seems doubtful, but he is still following her, and I
Mhm.
wanna know why.
Yeah, that's the thing is, like, what did this woman do? She's already shown us what she's partially capable of. Like,
Mhm.
the fact that she takes someone that was not just the person that delivered her, but likely her family doctor,
And likely
her
the
and
only doctor of
yeah,
this colony.
and the doctor she had her whole life, which is
Mhm,
probably about 40 years or so,
mhm.
but she went to this man probably her entire childhood, her teen years. Um, he probably has seen her and her entire family her entire life,
Mhm.
and she just shoots him in the head.
And she at one point, she tears up as he's saying, like,
Yeah,
"I held you in my hands,"
yeah,
and she still does it.
she still does it.
She's ruthless, and
Mhm,
that to me is her ruthlessness and her quietness and her calculation is it makes for a way more interesting, uh, character, leader, villain
mhm,
than the stereotypical guy that played, Tommy, than her right-hand man.
mhm.
I wanna know everything about this fucking
Yep.
character.
Mhm, definitely.
Um, uh, it also sets up quite nicely, something that we'll get to a little bit later, but it sets up, Henry and Sam,
Mhm.
which we don't if I'm not mistaken, we don't know much about in the games.
No, no, in the games, they were just passing through with a group as well, and that
Yes.
entire group got killed, and they were the
Mhm.
only survivors of that group.
Right.
In the TV show version, it appears that they lived there their entire lives in the city, and
Mhm.
she wasn't happy
And
that they divulged information or that Henry divulged information.
yes.
So now the entire town is after them.
Mhm. This was another I wanna focus on these guys before we get back to
Mhm,
the really, really good conversation between Joel and Ellie.
mhm.
Um, another change was, seeing Sam's drawings all over the attic.
Yep.
That was a little brutal to me.
Yeah.
That she's because again, like, when she steps into the attic, when no one's looking at her, she's, like, got this hungry look on her face.
Mhm. Yeah.
She's looking at these innocent children's drawings with a hunger,
Mhm.
and that's scary to
Yeah,
me.
she's a predator.
She's a predator.
Yeah, and you can see that look in her eye, like, as she's walking back to the holding cell to kill the doctor too.
Mhm.
Like, right as she leaves the crowd, there's just that tracking shot of her walking, and she's just got this look in her face
Oh, I
that's
love that shot. Oh god,
evil.
that performance is
It's
good.
so good.
Um, uh, I also thought it was an interesting choice for Sam to have drawn himself and Henry as superheroes.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
gonna be it's gonna be interesting to see
It's
where
gonna be
that goes.
interesting. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And
Um,
I think it's really interesting that they made his character deaf. Not that we know that yet at this
yeah,
point, but it's been
but
made
we know
apparent.
that, yeah.
Yeah, from all the promo material.
I wanna do a fun little game called "What do we think is in that room?" And I'm gonna count to 3, and we're both gonna say what we think is in that room.
Okay, I'm ready.
Alright, ready?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Bloater.
Bloater.
Interesting choice, interesting that they would include the bloaters in this show,
Yeah. Well,
and they
I knew
do
they would. I knew they would.
well, I mean, from the once that trailer came out, I
Yeah.
knew that they would. I honestly didn't think that they would, because Craig Mazin is so about the small, like
Yeah,
the small things are better,
right.
and so for them to include a bloater,
You gotta have a bloater.
you gotta have a bloater. Um, I thought it was an interesting choice too, character choice of hers, to be like,
Yeah,
don't tell it. We're not telling them about
yeah.
this.
Well, it kinda also makes me wonder, and this is a stretch, but
Hmm.
I'm also wondering, like, how do they get out? Like, obviously, it's about to cave in, but I'm kind of
Hmm.
wondering if they will maybe somehow combine the basement scene from the hotel with this, and
This is what I
Joel
thought too.
might be the one that starts this.
That's what I thought too.
Mhm. So in the game, there is a scene, and it's kind of an infamous section of gameplay because you have to start a generator to get out of this section to basically get a door to unlock. And you start the generator, and they all come running. Like
Hmm.
every clicker, stalker,
Stalker.
giant bloater just come running, and it is fear-inducing gameplay. And I get the sense that this is probably how they're kind of maybe going to mix those two things together.
That's what I was thinking too. That
Yeah.
was like my thought as soon as the ground started moving. I'm like, oh,
Hmm.
they're gonna do it.
Yep.
They're gonna flood that basement.
Yep.
um, I like I said, interesting character choice that she's like, and it kind of to me reiterates that like we're not seeing, like, she's holding her cards so close
Hmm.
and not letting even her own people know, because she's keeping that secret,
Yeah.
and will deal with it later. She is so hell bent on finding Henry
Yeah.
that she doesn't give a fuck about a bloater
Which is
in
crazy.
their basement.
Which is really
Reckless,
crazy.
reckless.
Reckless and insane when you think about all the people that she has under her
Hmm.
wing
Hmm.
that she's trying to keep safe, technically, or so she says.
Hmm.
But she just wants to get revenge
Hmm.
for two people that could easily they just want to get out of the city and go on their way and be
Yeah.
done with it.
And here I do want to bring up, and I try not to do this too often, other than like directly naming the podcast, but in their podcast, the first episode of the Last of Us podcast,
Hmm.
he talked about this is about the good and bad of love.
Yeah.
And here we're seeing, because we saw all the good pure beauty of Frank and Bill's love,
Hmm.
now we're starting to see where love is dangerous.
Yep.
and and it's just very well personified in
Oh,
Melanie
it
Lynskey's
is.
performance.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to see where we
I
go
can't
from
wait.
here.
Yeah, I think the next episode is going to be great. It's going to be really, really great.
I think so too. So now I want to go back to Joel and Ellie,
Hmm.
before they go back out onto the streets, and their
Hmm.
conversation about shooting people, about killing,
All killing spree.
which I think it's good dialogue. It's very
Hmm.
well handled by that
It is.
cast.
Yeah.
Um, there's something about her. I keep saying that. I need to find a different way to phrase that. But there's something about when it's the heaviness of Joel's decision to give Ellie the gun
Hmm.
again, giving her agency
Hmm.
again. I think trusting her that she'll do what he says, because she went back behind the wall when Joel had to
Hmm.
kill that dude.
Yeah.
Um, and him teaching her how to properly hold a gun.
Hmm. Which is
And
important.
yeah, I
Yeah.
liked the little bite at
Hmm.
Fedra. I almost said Hydra. The little bite at Fedra, that like they would tell you, like they would
Hmm.
show you how to hold a gun wrong.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, and then him like showing her that he can't get the gun out of her hand, and she giggles.
I know.
She giggles.
Yeah. I love it.
I love it.
It's
I
such
love
great
it.
acting.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
That scene to me was like
It
damn
was
near
it
perfect.
was like such horrible circumstances, but it
Hmm.
was so wholesome at the
So
same
wholesome.
time. And this is another thing that I loved that bothers me in film that they always get wrong. And she puts it in her back pocket and he says, "You're gonna shoot your ass
Your
out."
ass off.
And I'm like, thank you. Someone finally said it.
Yes,
So,
yes,
yeah, just little details like that they're putting in that usually just are like plot holes
yeah.
or like make your character seem kind of stupid.
Mhm.
They're putting in.
Or ignorable.
Yeah. Yep.
And I like, again, very Ellie, that even though he trusts her to listen to him, and she will listen to him when the
Mhm.
time comes, she's still
Yep.
not going to listen to him. So she's like, I'm not putting this in my backpack. I'm gonna put this in my coat pocket.
Yeah, it's still like, okay, well, a little better, I
Ellie,
guess.
Ellie just Ellieing.
Yep, pretty much.
Um, the final scene, I think we can get through this
Yeah.
before we're
Mhm.
done.
I think so.
The final scene, I didn't expect to smile as much in
Mhm.
any adaptation of The Last of Us
Right.
as I have in this episode. I smiled when she giggled, and my
Mhm.
heart kind of broke when she giggled.
Mhm.
Um,
Because you know what's
and
to come.
exactly, and even just thinking about the circumstances around them, the fact that she has like this moment of like being just a little kid.
I know.
How do you like?
Yeah.
Uh,
You
and I
just
gig.
you see her innocence there, but slowly being stripped away, and it's
Yes,
so sad.
it's so sad. And in the final scene, the or we establish that Joel is like going deaf in his right ear
Mhm.
from shooting, and I think that was established because that guy sneaked up on him from
Yep.
his right.
Mhm.
Um, great stuff.
Yeah.
Ellie giving him shit about not being able to hear the glass breaking,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
then both of them laughing at a bad joke.
It
I
was
again, I
just
started smiling.
yeah.
I could not stop smiling.
That's why I love this episode so much.
Hmm.
It felt like an encapsulation of Joel and Ellie's essence,
Yes,
and they fully feel like those characters to me at this point, like
me too.
completely, and
Yeah,
I'm fully invested.
I I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
I mean, it couldn't have been better.
No, no, not at all.
Um, and I like, again, I just like couldn't stop smiling, and until I heard the urgency in Ellie's voice in the morning.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, and again, interesting choice that Sam has covered himself in a superhero movie.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
want to know more.
I do too. I'm excited.
I'm so
I
excited.
can't wait. And we only have to wait 5 days now. Or
Hmm.
no, 4 days because it's Monday when we're recording this. So
Yeah.
it's coming.
All right. Thank you guys so much again for tuning in to the Bros and Cons podcast. We will see you next week with our ridiculous review of episode 5.
5. It's
All
trudging
right.
right along.
I
Yep.
know. It's every step closer is closer to the end.
I know, it's so sad. Mm.
But tune in again next week, guys. And thank you for all your support.
Bye.